Hazel, you are a retired minister, but I'm sure you have read many books. Tell us about the book you've chosen today for us, please.
The book I've chosen is a book called An Inside Job, The Life of a Prison Chaplain, written by Joy Osborne.
Okay. Do you know something about the author?
Joy lives in Lincolnshire, and I've met her a few times. She sometimes comes to the church which I attend.
Right.
She is retired. She did theological training, but she felt that God was calling her not to a building to lead a church, but she felt that God was calling her to the work of a prison chaplain.
Okay.
So she's spoken to it about what it was like working there, and she's spoken to us at Our Lady's meeting. And then last year she said, I'm writing a book. I go, oh, okay. So I got her book and she signed it for me. So on the front cover, she's put to Hazel and Stephen with best wishes and blessings from Joy.
That's
so
lovely.
I have her book myself that she's written.
Great.
And
so tell us about the book.
Well, it's a very short book. I've written it down. It's got only 13 chapters and 114 pages. So it's a quick read. And I found it very interesting because a lot of people have never been in a prison before. And a lot of people just don't know what it is like. So you get from this book, you get an idea of what it feels like to be locked up. You get a feeling of what it's like to be on your own, locked in a cell. You get an impression of what the chaplain does, visiting the men. This is a story of life in Lincoln Prison. And I discovered that the life of a prison chaplain not only cares for the inmates, but also the staff, the officers. Sometimes they have problems which a chaplain is often able to help with, pray for and visit. I found that she describes the time when there was a riot there and some of the cells were really vandalized and smashed up. And I thought, oh, you don't really go to work expecting the place to be in a mess. One thing that I did read was that the chaplaincy team have a prayer meeting every day. And I thought, well, that's a good start to start the day with a prayer meeting. And the day begins visiting the cells. Mundane work, some people would think. But then on one occasion, as one chapter says, there was bells ringing, shouting, noises. There'd been a death on Sea Wing. And when that happens, it's very often someone who has committed suicide. And a man who'd not been in prison before just could not cope. And Joy was asked to help where necessary. A few weeks after this event, one of the chapters tells us that the chaplain leader asked Joy if she would lead a memorial service for Jerry. The men wanted it because the men could not go to a funeral. In fact, some of the men were not able to go to their own personal family's funeral when there'd been because of the situation they were in. So, of course, Joy set up this memorial service in the prison chapel. Men put their names down who wanted to attend. 40 men put their names down. So Joy got 40 yellow roses. And she turned up and prepared the service with music, hymns, readings, and 40 yellow roses and candles. The men came in. It was a normal service, as some of them thought. Then they described what it was like with this man called Jerry who was able to help them. And they were really appreciated the fact that they could come and say their own personal tributes to the man that had helped them. After the service was finished, they had coffee and biscuits. Then the men went back to their cells. the prison volunteers went home and Joy was left on her own in the chapel. She saw the yellow roses and she gathered them up, put them in a vase, and when it was dinner time, her normal place was sat at a small table as the men came in for their dinner. The yellow roses were on the table. One of the men said, "Are those the roses from the chapel, miss?" "Oh, yes," she said. And he said, "I've never been to a chapel before, and I'm glad I did." So ministry in a prison, I discovered, was not just to those who normally go to church, those who sometimes they can't read, sometimes they can't even think of outside of jail. Some people have never done anything else but committed crimes. And I found it quite interesting that at the end of each chapter, Joy quotes from different verses of scriptures or a hymn or a song. And at the end of one of these chapters, she says, she quotes from Micah, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God?" And a chaplain always has to have faith, hope, and courage. You never know what each day might bring. You go to work and each day has a situation that a chaplain has to deal with. And I thought, when I read this, it's just a small book, and I picked it up and I read it again, and I thought, not many people remember those who've been in prison or come out of prison. And I thought, well, when you've read this book, I would think it might be a good idea to pray for people who are in prison, pray for the people who come out of prison, pray for the prison chaplains, the prison fellowship, the volunteers, and know that some of them have come to know Christ through being in prison, and they've gone on to good things. So my experience of reading this book is to understand what happens in a prison, but also to give life and hope to those who feel out of society, ostracized, but to encourage them and give them a friendly smile and a word of encouragement. So that's what this book has done for me, is reminded me that we should help people and encourage people, and also to pray for the chaplains, because when they've had a stressful, unusual day, they've still got to go home to their own life and their own family. So that's my thought on this book.
Yeah, I think you've given us a really good summary of this book today, Hazel. So what would you then say to people this morning to persuade them to read this book?
I would say, if you want to know what goes on in a jail, read it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Hazel, for telling us about the book by your bedside today. Thank you for this interview. Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye. Thank you.